After hearing the Quran for the first time, I knew I was a Muslim. So I figured I'd tell my conversion story next to the same river that I was next to, sitting by the pier 2 years ago when I heard the Quran for the first time, and I knew I was a Muslim. So as I tell my story, I'll do my best to not say like and but God only knows. It's funny because when I wear this, which I wear every day now, ever since coming back from Saudi for Ramadan, it's funny when people show their true colors by their body language and the way they look at you. But all those dirty looks don't mean anything, because the few Assalamu Alaikums I get because someone sees me wearing this knowing I'm a Muslim is worth it all. So I'll begin my story. It was like a cold February, late February, a couple weeks before Ramadan 2 years ago. And I just had a lot going on in my life. I'm not going to dive into all those details, but lost my dad to COVID. Then I lost my job with the New York Islanders, wrongfully terminated, which is another story. Lost my job with the New York Yankees, wrongfully terminated again, another long story. But even with all those struggles, the adversity that I dealt with, I always knew God had a plan. So human nature, I was upset, obviously, in the beginning, and angry because of how wrongfully I was treated. But I know Allah always had a plan and still has a plan for me. But it was a late night. I wasn't getting sleep over those past months leading up to the day that I knew I was a Muslim. But I couldn't sleep that night. I just couldn't. And I tried getting some rest, and I closed my eyes, and it was one of those nights where you just can't sleep. And I figured I would do what I normally do when I can't get rest. I'd walk to the pier, get some alone time, just mental break from everything, from the world. So I normally take a certain direction, certain path, certain walk from my apartment in Manhattan to the pier. But for whatever reason that night, I walked down a different street, and I forgot the bottle of water I was going to bring with me. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, it's New York City. There's always bodegas, shops open 24 hours. So I walked into a shop. All I wanted to do was get my bottle of water and get out and just be at peace by myself by the river. But I don't even know how we started talking, but the guy behind the counter and myself just had this conversation, and an hour goes by and I leave, and I'm like, wait a minute, what did we just talk about? It was like crazy why it was such a blur. Like, I remember things when I was like 5, 6 years old, but I was like, the conversation we had was such a blur to me, where when I got back to the pier that I was trying to get to, I sat down and I was like, wait, he said something about the Quran. Now, the only thing I knew about Islam or being a Muslim was that women wore hijab, and that the news portrayed Muslims, especially, 20 years ago after 9/11, as if you're a Muslim, you're a terrorist. So that narrative sticks with the public, right? But I didn't even know anything about Islam. I literally had no idea what the religion was. So as I'm sitting down, I was like, okay, he said the Quran. So I went on my phone, I went on YouTube, and I typed in Quran and then resuscitation. I clicked on it. Now, 31 years I've lived in the United States of America. I don't understand Arabic. I don't speak Arabic. But I clicked the Quran, and I looked up, and this beautiful crescent moon was in the sky, and I felt like I was like the only one in the city. When it started playing in my headphones, the feeling that I had in my heart and my soul is something that I can't even describe, because I looked up and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, I think I'm a Muslim. I don't even know what I'm listening to. I didn't even know what I just heard. But then as tears fell down from my face, I paused the resuscitation, and I just sat there in awe of just what just happened. It was like a weird, like, overwhelming but like spirit freeing feeling where I didn't even know what to think, but I just like was like, I think I'm a Muslim. So I go back to my apartment, just my mind is just like racing. I'm like, what just happened? I go on my laptop and I just type in, where's the nearest mosque? The NYU Islamic Center popped up, and I sent the imam a pretty long note so I can get granted access into the community, because I was like, all right, if I'm a Muslim, I want to know what's going on. And I'll read the note that I wrote to him because I have it saved. But after I sent that to him, the next night I was like, okay, I really want to talk more about what I just think I thought, now can't even speak thinking about it at this moment because it was such a crazy feeling. But I was like, I want to talk to the guy that I met behind the counter at the shop that I went to. So I went back at the same time the following night, and he wasn't there. I was like, oh, I was like, hey, like, is the guy that works here, is he here? Like, is he not working? He's like, who? He's like, Omar. He's like, nah. He's like, Omar works at another shop. He doesn't work here, like those hours. He was just filling in for me. He's like, oh, are you Christian? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, he's like, Omar said if you came back to get this to you. I was like, okay. So I have no idea what I'm about to get. I'm like, I haven't even known that guy for 24 hours and he's already given me a gift. And he hands me a Quran in English. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So I went back to my apartment that night and I opened it and I read the beginning in English. So I was like, that's what I was listening to in Arabic. And tears ran down my face again. I closed the Quran. I just like, it was like one of those things where it's like, I was like, what just happened again? But obviously I wanted to continue reading the Quran. Even though I had this feeling in my heart that I was a Muslim, I still wanted to read the Quran, do my own research, and trust God's timing with everything. A couple weeks go by, and I'm picking up the Quran, putting it back down. I don't really know why I stopped reading when I was reading. Most of the time it was because I got emotional. But also, I wasn't scared, but it was like I was almost delaying it. But I knew I had to continue reading. So a few days went by when I didn't pick up the Quran whatsoever. And where I live in Manhattan, there's a park by NYU that is always crowded, especially when it's nice out. It's just nuts. Dancing, music, weed, people are selling stuff. It's just a lot of nonsense going on. It's not peaceful whatsoever. But I was like, you know what? I was like, let me just walk. It's a nice day. I'm going to walk through the park. And I'm walking through the park and I see a bunch of people dressed in nice clothes. I see like mats on the ground and there's like barriers set up, like security, and then there's like a microphone. I'm like, what's happening? So I sat on the bench because I wanted to see what was going on. So I guess when I sat down, it was the beginning of Eid celebration, or like, you know, like the prayer, like, you know, celebrating Eid. As you can tell, I'm still like learning stuff, but I ended up sitting through the entire thing. And then I realized after it was over, because, you know, they're talking about Ramadan ending and celebrating like fasting and worshiping Allah. And I went back to my apartment, I opened the Quran, and it's flipped to the page talking about Ramadan. I was like, what? I was like, that's so crazy. I was like, all right, Allah, like, there's another sign. So time would trickle on, and every time I had a thought about something, I would open the Quran, and it would be exactly what I was thinking about. It answered all the questions. The exact thought was the exact page that I would just open. So after these signs were just one after another, I was like, okay. Then I came across the part where it speaks about Jesus not dying on the cross, Allah raising him. And I was like, wait a minute. I remembered something when I was 7 years old. Something that I haven't even thought about or remembered since that day. But 24 years ago, after school, because I went to Catholic school, so we watched Prince of Egypt, Passion of the Christ. So we finished watching Passion of the Christ, and I came home from school that day, and I was like, what? I normally just put my book back down, talk to my mom about the school, you know, did you make any friends today? Like, you want a snack? But I put my bag down, I ran to my room, and I stared at myself in the mirror. I was like, what did I just watch? I was like, why would God kill his only son? Like, he did nothing wrong. How is a human God? We just watched Prince of Egypt, where God was a burning bush talking to Moses, but now he's a guy, a human, getting killed on the cross for not doing anything wrong. But then he rose. Well, I was like, what? But when you're 7 years old and you're raised in a Catholic family, Christian family, you know, my name is Christian, it just faded away, that thought. Also, I'm 7 years old. Like, you know, care about like snacks and playtime, recess. So I didn't think about it after that. But when I'm reading the Quran, I was like, oh wow, I remember when I was 7. Why Allah placed that in my heart, in my mind, that had me think about, why would Jesus be God? How is he God? Like, and it all came back to me when I was reading the Quran. So it's like, okay, that's another clear sign. The signs just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And at this point, I really felt the need to finish reading the Quran before I became a Muslim. For whatever reason, I was like pushing the Quran away because, like, I don't know, if I just wanted to like not leave my old lifestyle. I didn't care what people thought about me if I became Muslim, but I knew that, like, my mom, since she named me Christian, she was very religious. I went to Catholic school. I'm like, how would she react? But I just trusted Allah's timing, and I would always get sent a sign to continue to read the Quran. Now, at this point, I really wanted to go to Jummah prayer, because I haven't been to one since I got access to NYU, but I think it was because I didn't know if I was allowed to. I was like, I'm not a Muslim, so like, am I allowed to go to Jummah prayer? But after October 7th, I saw what was going on with Israel and Palestine, and it was like, it made me angry, because I was like, this is a genocide. Like, how are they portraying like Gaza like this? This is disgusting. I'm like, I really want, and I see people like protesting and like supporting Palestine. I'm like, I wanted to be a part of that. So I went to Jummah, and the khutbah that the imam was talking about was centered around Palestine. And it was emotional for people in there. It was emotional for me too. Any human with a beating heart and a soul and this much of knowledge about the situation, the history, and what was happening would know how horrible it was. And if you don't feel that in your heart and your soul and feel the pain, then I don't know what to tell you. But the guy that was sitting next to me, I don't know if he was just because Muslim or just because it was a genocide. Maybe he had family there. But he was crying. And I remember I just put my arm around him. We didn't even say any words to each other, but I just felt like he needed someone, and I was there for him. And I felt the brotherhood. I felt like I was part of the Ummah. It made me feel safe. It made me feel at home. Like, being around all believers and Muslims, just like the energy is just different. Like, it's just like it's just peaceful. So after that, I started doing a lot of research on Israel, Palestine. And then I, ended up doing a lot of research on end times, which I probably did too much research because it was overwhelming me. I was spending every waking hour researching end times. So one night, I decided, I was like, okay, I want to do my Shahada, but I want to do it in front of Muslims. So I think when I research what you should do for your Shahada, you have to say it in front of like 2 Muslims with conviction, or like, I said it said you can say it by yourself. But Ramadan was approaching, and I was like, okay, like I think I should do it tomorrow at NYU. But I plan human plans, Allah plans better. So that night I was like, I need to finish reading the Quran first. I was like really adamant on finish reading the Quran before I took my Shahada, but I still had like another fourth of the Quran to go. And I was sitting there around like 2, 3 in the morning, and I just found myself like rushing through pages. It's like I was just like scanning through words, and I really wasn't like reading the words of Allah. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing crazy winds gusting and like horns blowing. And I'm like, I've never heard these sounds before outside my apartment. And I checked my weather app, there was like little to no wind. And then I also was like, there's no cars. Like, what? I opened my window and the noises stopped. I sat back down, I was like reading the Quran, but I was still rushing reading. And then the noises picked up again. And I opened my window, I'm like, and then I look outside, my hand, I couldn't feel wind. I'm like looking around, where's the sound coming from? Close the window, sit back down to read the Quran. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, there's no way. The sounds are getting louder. I was frustrated. I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, all I want to do is just sit there in peace and read the Quran in quiet. Then all of a sudden I remembered something. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. It's like when I was a kid, I remember in religion class, one of my teachers said something about like biblical scriptures or prophecies about end times where like angels would be blowing horns and like there'd be like winds gusting. And I was like, okay, like relax. Like then I started like, okay, like I've never had a panic attack in 31 years of my life, but I started like feeling like crazy. Then I was like, wait a minute, I think I just watched a video a few days before that about like, there was like a hadith where like the sun rises from the west, like the final hour, once X, Y, and Z happens, it's too late. You can't become Muslim. You can't like any sin that you can't repent for any sin that you've committed up to that moment. And I was like, oh my gosh. I started like freaking out. I was like sweating, and then like I was just like staring at the wall, and then I literally had this jolt feeling of it's too late. It's too late. I got up and I started pacing my apartment, and I was like putting my head in my hands and just couldn't even like think straight. I was literally losing my mind. I was freaking out. I was like, it's too late. I can't become a Muslim. So I jumped to my bedside, grabbed my laptop, and I literally just Googled, what do I need to say to become a Muslim? And I said it with the most conviction I've ever said it in my life. I screamed it out loud. And the verse that a single teardrop fell on a certain verse. Okay, wow. I lost my composure there for a second. So the verse, the teardrop, it fell on Surah Al-Hajj, saying, indeed Allah will admit those who believe and do good into gardens under which rivers flow. Surely Allah does what he wills. And a single teardrop falls on that verse. And I felt, the feeling that I had when I listened to the Quran for the first time was second place to the feeling that I had that moment, because I felt like my soul. I was awake, but I could feel my soul out of my body. Like I could feel it would be free. And I always believed in heaven, but I was always questioning it when I was a Christian, because I was like, how can you just be granted access into paradise if you just say that you believe that Jesus died on the cross? And then after that moment, I knew that there was life after this. So it was just crazy. But that was, and like, it's like, that's why I sit here for talking about this. Like, this was the note that I sent the Imam at NYU the night after hearing the Quran for the first time, knowing that I was a Muslim. I sent him a note, and it read, "I've always believed in God my entire existence on this earth. I was born and raised in a Christian family, attended Catholic school from kindergarten through high school, and have always been a man of faith. I've always been very respectful of Islam, and it's become more and more obvious to me and more pertinent that Islam is the last religion on the planet. I'm very new to this feeling of being called on by God to turn to Islam. But I listened to the Quran for the first time in my life tonight, and the second I began listening to it, I had this strong feeling in my heart and soul that I was destined by Allah to convert to Islam. My connection with God was stronger than I ever felt before. I know I have a lot to learn, and I'm hoping to get more guidance from the Islamic Center at NYU, so it can help me on this journey towards becoming a Muslim. While I definitely have a lot of questions that I'm looking for answers about, I truly feel that I do not have any concerns about this feeling because I know and believe Allah has led me on this path. It's not a matter of if I convert. It's just a matter of when I feel the timing is right, trusting in God's timing always. The journey has so many complex layers to it that I feel I could write 1,000,000 pages, but I'll try to keep it short and sweet.